class, Christ is risen.
Risen indeed, as he said.
And here is the chronology of the Persian period in the Bible. The last, and this is on your newsletter, the last 100 years. So we have Cyrus that you know about. Cambyses was his son. He served about 7 years and died on the way home from Egypt after he conquered Egypt with what? Good, cats. Oh, I fell off the chain. I'll better put this up. Somebody messed with this too. After Cambyses, there was another king. It was Pseudo-Smyrtus. So put his name right under Cambyses. He was the one who pretended to be the king. And so they called him Pseudo-Smyrtus. And Darius, the next king, killed him. How do we remember how King Darius became king? He was in the royal line, but he wasn't the next person to be king. What did he do? The name of a what? Of a horse. That's right. He went out with a bunch of guys who all wanted to be king, and they said the first person whose horse neighs will be the king. That's kind of a scary way to make a decision, isn't it? And so that's how Darius became king. His son was Xerxes. Xerxes is the husband of Esther. Next week we will finish Esther with our gargle and a cookies of Haman's ears. You're going to make a lot of noise next week, right? How many of you have grandkids or kids you can bring? Okay. 42. Don't bring all of yours. Wow. Okay. And then the next week we will start Artaxerxes. We're on page 46. And once you're finished with Artaxerxes, that is the end of the Old Testament. Okay. Queen Vashti's humiliation. This is page 46. They were at the end of their 6-month banquets for him to try to raise money for his 5 million man army. He needed a lot of money, didn't he? Now, if you didn't hear that lesson last week, it's on YouTube. Thank you, Kevin, for doing that. Be sure and listen to it. We're going to, someday, I've been praying, I may have to buy a new computer to get it to sound better, but listen to it. Queen Vashti gave a banquet in the royal palace, and Xerxes decided to make a carnal spectacle of his life. Carnal means the mindset of a man when he sees a beautiful woman. That's flesh, the fleshly thoughts of desires. And that's what a carnal spectacle is. So she gave a banquet, and then so I want us to go down to number 2. Oh, here's what he did, verse 11. He wanted to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown. Jewish tradition says that was all she was to wear, was her royal crown. Because look at the last sentence. In order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. And so that's what Jewish tradition says. She refused, didn't she? Yeah. And she refused to do it. Where is that? There we go. Now, the personality traits. I told you when you read Esther 1 and 2 yesterday. I'm sorry that came out so late. But I told you to look for the personality traits that would be exhibited by King Xerxes. For King Xerxes to do this, what kind of traits did you think about? Well, I'll erase that and you think about it. David, you gave me one this morning. What did you say?
Every time he made a decision, he was drunk.
That's right. Every time he made a major decision, he was drunk. Now, according to my chronology Bible that gives the cultural background, this is a wonderful book to have, and you can get it anywhere. The cultural background gives the backgrounds of all of the people in the Bible, but it says that the Persian kings, it was their tradition not to make decisions unless they were fully inebriated. So if you will look at letter A, verse 10, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, that means he was a little inebriated. And that's when he decided to have his wife brought before him, because he wanted to show her off. So let's look at verse 12. The queen. Well, I said he was abusive. I would say that was abusive. Would you not? Exploitive, humiliating, cruel. It was an impulsive decision. By the way, when they were drunk, when they made their decisions, they would get together the next time they were all sober and evaluate the decision. What do you think? Glad we don't live there. The queen. The queens in Persia were generally out in society. She was giving her own banquet, but that was her decision to do. And she refused. I've got to read what she says about her. It says she was reported to be the mother of Artaxerxes, Xerxes' successor. She was reputed to be a powerful, merciless shrew.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the kind of woman she was, a powerful, merciless shrew. So if her husband demanded that she do something and she didn't want to do it, she became a merciless what? Alright. So, what he was asking her to do was what his concubines would do, or the women in his harem. And she refused to be degraded to the level of a woman in the harem. So when the attendants delivered the king's command that she refused to come, the king became what? Furious. He became furious and he burned with anger. That would be scary. Because last week I told you about at his banquets when one of his advisors refused to bring money and support his invasion of Greece. This person happened to be his uncle, and he almost had him killed because he refused to help him with the plans of the invasion of Greece. He burned with anger. Now this very banquet in Esther 1 may be the banquet described by Herodotus in his histories. He called them histories. And in volume 7, he talks about this banquet. This is what I was just going to tell you. Histories by Herodotus, and he recorded that while entertaining a special assembly of Persian nobility, he became enraged due to lack of support for the war effort, threatening his own uncle, one of his closest advisors, with what? With death. So we find that this man he did anger management classes, didn't he? Yes. And so Queen Vashti is deposed in the next verses. So now what we're going to do is listen to chapter 1 of Esther. I want you to put yourself in that beautiful, beautiful reception hall with the king and with all of the rich nobility, bringing money to the king, and then he summoned his wife to come in her crown because she was lovely to look at. Then we're going to find out what he did. Okay, let's listen to this.
Esther, chapter 1. This is what happened during the time of Xerxes, the Xerxes who ruled over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Cush. At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne in the citadel of Susa, and in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. The military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes, and the nobles of the provinces were present. For a full 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa. The garden had hangings of white and blue linen, fastened with cords of white linen and purple material, to silver rings on marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other, and the royal wine was abundant, in keeping with the king's liberality. By the king's command, each guest was allowed to drink in his own way, for the king instructed all the wine stewards to serve each man what he wished. Queen Vashti also gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him, Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king: Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 nobles of Persia and Media, who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom.
According to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti?
He asked.
She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her.
Then Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles,
Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the provinces of King Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, and so they will despise their husbands and say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, the Persian and Median women of the nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end of disrespect and discord. Therefore, if it pleases the king, let him issue a royal decree, and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Also, let the king give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then, when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all his vast realm, all the women will respect their husbands, from the least to the greatest.
The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, so the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in its own language, proclaiming in each people's tongue that every man should be ruler over his own household.
So we learned last week that in the first 4 or 5 years of his reign is when he was raising the money and preparing his army. He had to have cavalry, he had to have elephants, he had to have food. His 5 million men, I told you, I think, that's what Herodotus told us. Herodotus was a Greek scholar. The Greeks hated the Persians. Obviously, they kept being invaded by Persia. And so when Herodotus wrote his histories, he always tried to make Persia look bad. So he's the one who told us about the kings making their decisions when they were inebriated. Herodotus told us that that Xerxes had 5 million men. So I think that may be a little exaggerated. We don't really know. But it makes for good history, doesn't it? All right, so it's in the 6th year of his reign that he invaded Greece. So while after he divorced Vashti, he went to Greece. And that is when they were having the contest for all of the beautiful women to be the next queen. All right? So let's look what happened. He first had to have a way to get his massive army and his cavalry and his horses and his elephants and supplies from Asia Minor to Greece. So look at your map, and you see Turkey, right? This is today's map. Back in the days of Xerxes, Turkey was what country? Nation, empire. Persia. So put Persia there. Sorry, Kevin, I should have told you that, but I forgot. Put Persia, but we need to know that that's where Turkey is. Find the Black Sea. Then go down to the Sea of Marmara. And then we go over to the Aegean Sea on your map. Aegean means what? Goat. In Greek, this was the Goat Sea. Now, to get from the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara with your ships, you had to go through the Bosphorus Strait. See that on your map? Okay, here we are. Whoops. The Bosphorus Strait. It's also called Bosporus, but either way it works. And you see Istanbul? That's the capital of Turkey. Istanbul is divided right down the middle with the Bosphorus Strait. Budapest is the same way. Lyndon took me to Budapest a couple of years ago, and on one side was Buda, and on the other side of the river was Pest, and it became Budapest. That's the way Istanbul is. And that's the division between Asia and Europe. That's what they call it. So Istanbul, part of Istanbul is in Asia, and the other half of it is in Europe. And then you go down to the Marmara Sea, and then you have to go down to the Aegean Sea. You're going to get to the Aegean Sea through the Dardanelles. That's a strait. Okay? It's also in Greek, in ancient Greece, called the Hellespont. Write that in there, Hellespont. All right, you got the map in your head? Find the Bosphorus Strait on your map and the Dardanelles Strait. What is a strait? Yes, ma'am.
It is basically a narrow body of water between two long rivers.
Two larger bodies of water. Good. Give Mackenzie a hand. It's a narrow body of water connecting two larger bodies of water. They are considered, both of these, a dividing line today between Asia and Europe. Lyndon taught me that years ago. How many of you knew that? Good. A lot of you did. Good. Looking at the map, all right? Just look at that map. Let's go back to Persia and Xerxes. He wanted to go to Europe. How would you suggest that Xerxes get from Asia Minor to Greece? How would you do it? You'd have to go across the straits, wouldn't you? Okay, so let's look at this. This is ancient Greece again, and I just wanted you to see that because these are all the 1,500 Greek city-states, all these little islands, 1,500 of them were up into Macedonia and into Corinth and Athens and Sparta and Delphi. All of those were city-states. All of them had their own king, their own government, and they didn't get along because no nation gets along with another, do they? So they were always fighting, but when Persia came along and started invading Greece, they began to ally themselves together. All right. So Xerxes ordered the construction of 3 bridges across the most narrow waterway, which was the 37-mile long Hellespont or the Dardanelles. So look at your map. and you can find the Dardanelles, and that was 37 miles long. And he found the most narrow part of that 37 miles, and it was about 3/4 of a mile wide. Now, could they swim across it? All his army and their horses and their elephants? Maybe he should just say, y'all, 5 million of you and your horses, swim across the strait here. It's only 3/4 of a mile. That'd be a long way, wouldn't it? So, and here is the strait today from satellite, and he wanted to go from here over here, and it's 3/4 of a mile. So he decided to build these 3 bridges. Are we doing okay? Where are we? Do I need to go back?
No.
Okay. Letter B. This is a better picture. Do I have a picture of these bridges? Okay. The bridges were made of they're boats, pontoon boats. Who can tell me what a pontoon boat is?
Big one, pull up, you can get on it.
Big cylinders underneath the boat. And they had air in it and would make them float. Is that right, Jerry? Jerry's not listening. He's talking to Aspen. Jerry. Am I right on the pontoon boats? Okay.
Yes.
300 of them. And he connected these 300 boats with cords and cables. So I wondered in my mind, what were those cords and cables made of? And they were made of papyrus from Egypt. Okay, got it? Wooden planks were covered with brushwood and earth to create a walkway across the boats. And then screens were erected on the sides of the bridges because the horses and the elephants had to cross over on these pontoon bridges, and if they saw the water, it would frighten them. So he put these sides on the bridges to help the animals. Mark, I can see your mind going, so do you have some questions back there on this? Kind of interesting, isn't it? So, he got his bridges built. Before his army could get across, wouldn't you know, a storm destroyed the bridges. How do you think he reacted, knowing his character traits? How do you think Xerxes reacted when a storm destroyed all 300 of his boats, 100 boats per bridge? He probably got angry, didn't he? You know what he did, don't you? What did he do? He lashed the water 300 times, one lash for each boat. So he was punishing the sea. So let's see. In a display of his fury, Xerxes ordered his soldiers to punish the sea. Those pictures are just awful. I want you to go into Google and look at this because it's just so interesting. Now, of course, Herodotus wrote this account, okay? But he punished the sea by lashing it with chains 300 times. Now, you can see this, I think, on the movie 300. Is that right, Kurt? Can you see all of this? That movie? 300. You can't? Well, you told me about the movie 300. It's about Xerxes and going to Greece. All right. Well, Kurt told me one time it's pretty violent. Okay, so you probably don't want to look at it unless you want to. I can't take violent movies very long. But here he has his soldiers lashing the sea, and there he is way back here, thinking, I got control of the sea, right? And furthermore, he threw handcuffs into the water, symbolizing his attempt to enslave the sea. And being the man he was, he ordered the beheading of the engineers who designed and built the boats, the bridges. And we're going to let little Esther marry him. Do you see any red flags? Yes. When you see red flags before you get married, Pay attention. But she didn't have any choices. Okay. Now when did all of this happen? Before he met Esther. After he divorced Vashti and before he married Esther, all of this was happening. Why didn't the author of Esther put it in the book? Mainly because he knew his readers of that time knew what Xerxes was doing. And his point was talking about Esther. So pretty much, if you read the newspapers and paid attention to the news on TV, you would know what the king was doing, right? This is a video, a real short one on Xerxes and his hubris, meaning his extreme pride. When a king whipped the sea.
Xerxes' hubris, when a king whipped the sea. Imagine a king so powerful, so convinced of his own dominion, that he dared to punish the ocean itself. This is the story of Xerxes, a historical figure whose ambition clashed violently with the untamable forces of nature. In 480 BC, Xerxes, the Persian king, stood poised to invade Greece. His army was a behemoth, a force unlike anything the ancient world had witnessed. To reach Greece, they needed to cross the Hellespont, a strategic waterway now known as the Dardanelles. Xerxes' engineers devised a daring plan, a floating bridge constructed from 600 ships lashed together. This ambitious project aimed to create a pathway for his massive army, but the sea, an entity older and more powerful than any empire, had other plans. Before Xerxes' troops could even set foot on the bridge, fierce storms descended. The waves, relentless and unforgiving, tore the structure apart, scattering ships and shattering the king's plans. Xerxes, consumed by rage and humiliation, responded with an act of unbelievable arrogance. In a fit of fury, Xerxes ordered his soldiers to whip the Hellespont 300 times. Chains were thrown into the waves, and the water was branded as punishment for its defiance. This act, a blend of madness and hubris, serves as a stark reminder of the limits of human power against the natural world. Though the bridge was eventually rebuilt, and Xerxes' army crossed into Greece, the sea continued to challenge his authority. Future storms destroyed the crossing again, proving that even the mightiest king cannot command the elements. Xerxes' story is a dramatic historical lesson in humility, reminding us that some forces remain beyond our control. Are you fascinated by tales of ancient empires and the clash between humanity and nature? Dive deeper into history. Research the battles of Thermopylae and Salamis, explore other examples of hubris in historical figures, and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts.
Okay, so we can see the character of our king now, King Xerxes. So, the invasion of Greece, and you say, why are we studying ancient battles between Persia and Greece? They are very significant, because it was these wars, these invasions, that increased the growth and the power of Greece. Because 100 years after this, Alexander the Great came into Persia and conquered Persia in like 3 years. All right? So this was a real opportune time for Greece to bring all of their city-states together and became a powerful empire as well. I think that is a cool picture right there of them getting on their ship. By the way, he built another bridge and got his army across. And wouldn't you know, the storms destroyed that bridge. Okay, now let's look at page 48. I'm going to go through this because this could be a whole lecture for, a couple of hours if you were in college. I think you're getting a college degree here, but I'm not going to go through all these as if I were teaching a college class, all right? But there were some battles that are important, and the reason I think this is important is because it helped you understand the book of Esther, because they were not living in a vacuum. There were things happening all over the empire. And it really built up who Xerxes was. It made Esther the woman she became. And it's our heritage. It's what happened to the people of God and our ancestors spiritually, right? Our spiritual ancestors. There are 5 significant battles, and this is a great map. If you'll look at it, the Persian Empire is the purple. And you can look it on your map on page 48. The Greek states are all in, can I say orange? Your map is not very good either. You're selling, we got to figure out, is it Jerry, is it the copying machine? Well, we need to figure that one out, okay, because this is not good. So we need to work on that. The Battle of Marathon was Darius in 490 BC. And so find number 1. And then number 2 is the Battle of Thermopylae. Boy, that was an interesting place. And Lyndon and I got to see that when we went to Greece. So interesting battle. The Persians burned Athens. Find Athens, number 3. They burned Athens because it was Athens that had defeated his father at Marathon. Marathon was just a few miles north, well, it was 26 miles north of Athens. And that's how we got the race, the marathon race. And then there is the Battle of Salamis, that was a naval battle, and the Battle of Plataea. So it was only just a few years that these battles occurred. And Darius went in 490, his son went in 480, exactly 10 years later. So let's just look at this. Can you see your map a little bit? You want me to turn the light off so you can look at this one? You got it okay? All right. Find Athens, because that is a bay. Battle 4 is the Battle of Salamis. That whole battle was a ship battle, and it would happen right there in that bay, right in nearby Athens. And Brother Leo was a Navy man, right, Brother Leo?
No, ma'am.
Who's the Navy man here? Jerry? Who else
Jack.
is Navy?
Jack.
Jack was Navy. So if I make mistakes here, you let me know, okay? The Battle of Marathon, that is page 41 in your notes. You want to go see it, read it this week. King Darius was defeated by the Athenians, and it's this battle by which we now have won. It was 26 miles that Phidippides ran. It was a marathon race, 26 miles from Marathon to Athens. How many of you remember that last weeks ago? Nobody remembers the marathon? Oh, boy. Okay, good. Okay. The battle, okay, that was letter A, the battle under King Darius. Now, 10 years later, King Xerxes launches the second invasion of Greece. You remember the battles under King Darius was the second invasion. Now, let's look at the Battle of Thermopylae. That's a pass. And look at your picture here. Thermopylae is between 2 mountains. It's that mountain pass right there. Very narrow pass. And so let me just tell you about that one. In Greek, wait, where'd that go? Okay, in Greek, Thermopylae means, well, what's thermo? What's that? That's a Greek prefix. What does it mean? Hot. Okay, so Thermopylae means hot gates. Thermostat, thermonuclear, whatever. All means hot. Derived its name from its hot sulfur springs, and in Greek mythology, the hot gates is one of the entrances to hell. Y'all think this is interesting? Okay, I got one answer. Yes. At the Thermopylae Pass, King Leonidas, now this is the 300 movies, right? Yeah. Okay. At Thermopylae, King Leonidas from Sparta, and he has an army of 300 Spartans. And we know the story of Spartans, don't we? How when they find it on your map, Sparta was totally different from Athens. They were very military oriented. Their little boys were taken from their moms when they were just little bitty and trained to be soldiers. The girls were trained to be military. They were very, very tough. Whereas Athens was more of a intellectual kind of place. That's where the philosophers came from. That's where the scientists came from, was in Athens. But here we have King Leonidas with 300 Spartans. They manned that Thermopylae pass. Thousands of Persians were killed as they tried to get through that pass. The Spartans were there. And they just killed all of the Persians as they came through. What happened? Does anybody know how that battle ended? That night, one of the Spartans told one of the Persians how to get around the mountain. There was another path around the mountain where you could get on the other side. And they went over there, and that was when the king, what was his name? Leonidas, knew that they would all die. But it became a real powerful story of courage and pride. The 300 Spartans were defeated by the Persians because of a spy. That's the movie 300. Is that what it's called, Steve? Okay. Now let's look at this Battle of Thermopylae. It's just a real short video, but it's kind of interesting. Lights and volume, please.
This is Sparta!
In the annals of history, there are tales that transcend time, stories that echo through the ages with the resonance of heroism, sacrifice, and defiance. One such legendary saga unfolds amidst the rugged pass of Thermopylae, where a small band of Spartans stood as a bulwark against the mighty Persian Empire, their valor etching a chapter of unparalleled bravery in the annals of warfare. Imagine a narrow mountain pass, like a single jagged tooth jutting out from towering cliffs. This is Thermopylae, Greece in 480 BC, and the air crackles with tension. On one side, a seemingly endless wave of Persian soldiers under the mighty King Xerxes I stretches towards the horizon. On the other, a meager 7,000 Greeks, a fraction of the Persian force, stand firm. This wasn't just any battle, it was a last stand, a desperate attempt to hold back an empire. Leading the Greeks was Leonidas, the stoic Spartan king. Renowned for their discipline and unwavering courage, the Spartans formed the core of the Greek force, a mere 300 strong. Leonidas wasn't naive. He knew the odds were heavily stacked against them, but the Greeks had a secret weapon, the geography of Thermopylae. The pass was narrow, constricting the vast Persian army, forcing them to fight in a confined space. Here, the Greeks, with their long spears and shields, could hold their ground. The first day was a brutal clash of steel. The Persians, wielding shorter weapons, were mowed down in droves as they funneled through the pass. Xerxes, frustrated by the Greeks' stubborn resistance, unleashed his elite warriors, the Immortals. Even these formidable soldiers couldn't break the Greek line. Day 2 was more of the same, a bloody stalemate. Xerxes, furious and impatient, considered retreat. But then fate intervened. A local Greek named Ephialtes, lured by promises of riches, betrayed the Greeks' position. He revealed a secret mountain path that could bypass the Thermopylae bottleneck. Xerxes, seizing this opportunity, sent a detachment of his army on a flanking maneuver. When dawn broke on the third day, Leonidas knew their position was compromised. He could have retreated, saving his own life. But retreat wasn't in a Spartan's vocabulary. Leonidas made a heart-wrenching decision. He dismissed most of the Greek army, ordering them to fight another day. He, along with 300 Spartans, 700 Thespians who refused to abandon their comrades, and a handful of others, stayed behind to hold the pass. They knew they wouldn't survive,
but their sacrifice would buy precious time for the rest of Greece to prepare. The final battle was a whirlwind of carnage. The Greeks, surrounded on all sides, fought with the fury of cornered lions. Leonidas himself fell, taking down a Persian commander in a last, glorious act. By the end of the day, the remaining Greeks lay dead, a monument to their bravery. Thermopylae wasn't a victory in the traditional sense. The Persians eventually marched on, but the battle's significance is undeniable. The Greeks, vastly outnumbered, had shown the world that courage and unwavering resolve can defy even the most powerful empires. Their sacrifice became a rallying cry, uniting the Greek city-states and inspiring them to win the war. The legend of Thermopylae teaches us that heroism isn't about winning every battle. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even against insurmountable odds. It's about inspiring others to fight for a greater cause. The 300 at Thermopylae may have fallen, but their echo of defiance continues to resonate through the ages, reminding us that courage and sacrifice can change the course of history. So, the next time you face a challenge that seems insurmountable, remember the defiant stand at Thermopylae. Courage can be contagious, that a single act of bravery can inspire others to rise up and fight for what they believe in. A spark that whispers, "You too can be a hero. You too can make a difference."
When you go to Greece, you'll go to Thermopylae and you will see that big house. And it just kind of makes you appreciate the bravery of those men. So that's the third battle, second battle. Look down at number 3. Xerxes marched into Athens to avenge his father. Athens who had defeated Darius at Marathon. So he went into Athens and already taken all the people out of Athens. They said that the only people left really in Athens were some of the soldiers up in the, what is that called? A big, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building on a hill in Athens. Parthenon. That's where they all were. But the civilians had been taken out of the city. He plundered and burned it to the ground, practically burned it to the ground. I think it was the Parthenon that was the only thing left. I'm glad that was done. All right, that's the next battle. Then number 4 is a battle of Salamis, and that's right there in the Bay Area of Athens. The Greeks halted the Persian advance into Greece by destroying their ships, just like they got into that narrow pass. They got all these ships into this narrow valley and surrounded them and destroyed many, many of them. That's the naval battle of Salamis. There are videos on that too, but I know we don't have time. How many of you go into your YouTube and look this stuff up? It's really, really a great way to spend an afternoon looking at the videos of these events. All right, now, the Greeks ultimately defeated the Persians at the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC. And never again will there be an alliance of the Greek city-states. Sparta and Athens, who were mortal enemies, Corinth and Megara, they all allied themselves together and they fought against the Persians. It is the Battle of Salamis that marks the Plataea that marks the end of the second invasion of Greece. And the Persian Empire would never again launch an attack on mainland Greece. And it was King Xerxes who finally signed the treaty to leave Persia, to leave Greece alone. Okay? Now, scholars believe, this is letter C, that King Xerxes was engaged in the second invasion of Greece in the 3rd year to the 7th year of his reign. And all of these events occurred between chapter 1, verse 3 of Esther to 2:16. So when you read chapters 1 to chapter 2, verse 16. That's when all of this was happening. So, before next week, find a video of Esther, of the reading of Esther, or a video of the story of Esther, and what it's going to bring. A noise maker. Isn't that wonderful? We actually finally get to make noise. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for your word and the fact that we can go into history and find how it connects to the Bible. We find the culture and we find the context. Thank you for that, Lord. Thank you that we can have the ways to do it today that my grandfather never had a chance to do. Thank you for that, Lord.